Started here. Now, I want to thank everybody at home who is joining us. We appreciate you being here with us tonight. My name is Carole Grooms. I'm the current president of ASBDA, and it's my honor and privilege to get to host this next edition of our Legend series of interviews with musical icons. And our musical icon tonight is Gordon Goodwin, who we are so pleased to have with us and appreciate you so much giving us a bit of your time tonight. On our panel, we have a couple of more panel members who are going to join late, I believe. But right now we have Jeff Phillips, who is one of our ASBDA members in Tennessee, where I live also. Jeff's the past president of ASBDA and retired from secondary school teaching. And we have Tom Kessler in Connecticut, who teaches high school. And we have David Blake in California, who is a middle school director with a middle school jazz band, which I had for many years. And not to leave out Gordon Goodwin, our guest tonight. So I want to start us out with just kind of an opening question here, and then our panelists will take turns asking some questions, and we'll talk for about an hour or so. So, Gordon, I understand you grew up in Kansas before you moved to California at the college age, and you've been there ever since. Is that correct?
That's not correct. I was born in Kansas, but we moved out when I was about 2.
Oh, okay.
And that was a big deal because my mom grew up born on a farm, and it was most people were born and lived and died in the same town. But my dad had heard that there were a lot of new teaching gigs in California. So they headed west, and he pulled my mom out of her, farming community, much to the chagrin of her, siblings and mom and dad, but went out to California. So I pretty much grew up, in the Los Angeles area. Interesting how that worked, because when I became interested in music, and especially in high school age, and I saw the deep talent pool in a city like Los Angeles because of all the opportunities for musicians. And I remember thinking, boy, that's so great that I'm here, with all this talent and jazz talent. And then later on in my career, I started to travel around and do gigs and guest artist appearance. And I go back to Kansas and places like that. And I find these amazing musicians. And so I learned that even though there's often a focus of the business, now it's kind of New York, LA, Nashville, but there are incredible musicians everywhere in the country. Matter of fact, my cousin, who also grew up on the farm, was the first one. She goes, you ever heard of Oscar Peterson? And I go, I think I'm like in 9th grade. I said, yeah, of course I have. She goes, here, let me show you. And she had like about 10 Oscar Peterson records. I'm in her freaking farm. It's like they had indoor plumbing, but still. And she has all these Oscar Peterson records, and it blew my mind. And it actually was a little bit of a correction for me, that I could say, well, I guess you can, live on the farm and still appreciate some of the finer things. And so anyway, yeah, grew up in LA and have lived here my entire life.
I know for myself as a teacher, I've spent most of my career, not all, but most of it at the middle school level, and had a middle school jazz band for many years. And yeah. You got on my radar with the Big Fat Band.
Yes.
And as I know you did with so many other educators, and myself, and I know many others, we watched and waited, oh gosh, will these charts ever be available for us to play? And we were so excited when they came out. Of course, I taught middle school, and we didn't get to play many of them or any of them at that age. But in the meantime, I've learned that there was lots going on in the life of Gordon Goodwin long before the Big Fat Band, and much more than a band leader, composer, conductor. And, I think I'd like to hear, as a school band director myself, before passing things on to the other panelists here, tell me a little bit about your school band experiences and how somehow it must have gotten you on the path that led you to where you are. What was your first band experience, and what did that first band director or second band director, what did they do that something stuck somewhere?
Yeah,
was
indeed.
Musical or?
It was middle school where my life really kind of took a sharp turn into the world of big band jazz when my middle school band director, who also was the director of the high school, his name was Robin Snyder, still with us actually. And he said, and I, at the time, I was really a huge fan of Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. I just loved that stuff. I had a little Tijuana Brass band myself when I was in 5th grade. And the only non-music job of my life was mowing the grass around the neighborhood. I get like $1 to mow people's grass. So I did 10 of them and had $10. And I bought the Herb Alpert Tijuana Brass songbook. And I put the band together and we played that stuff. And I just was my first musical love. So my band director, Robin, says, okay, man, that's great, but I think I'd like you to listen to this. And he gets out a Count Basie record called Basie Straight Ahead. And he flips it over to side 2 and he puts the last song on side 2. I don't know why he picked that song, but it was called The Queen Bee. And it was composed by a guy named Sammy Nestico. And he dropped the needle and it changed my life. I had an epiphany for some reason. This innocent little song that's not really innovative in any way. It's just sweet and kind of pleasant. And it changed my life. And I said, this is what I have to do. I didn't even know what it was. But, and so at that point, my band director goes, you should write some music like this. I said, how do you do it? I don't know how to do that. He goes, you'll figure it out, which is kind of the truth. Most of the time, composers just sit down and figure it out. What sounds good to me? What kind of chords or melodies or rhythms, appeal to me and express what I want to do. Now, so I went home to my parents' house and I sat down on the floor and I had some music paper and I wrote alto sax 1. And I wrote 4 bars of music. And then I put that on the floor and then I wrote alto sax 2. And I wrote 4 bars that I thought would max. And I did that for the whole band. Then I did the next 4 bars. I didn't know there was a thing that's like a score where you could organize your material. I'm surrounded by paper. And so, but I was fortunate that the middle school band agreed to play it. And we recorded it at our little spring concert and whatnot. So that was really significant for me because as I went on, I would notice and start to associate with better musicians from other schools. A lot of good players, but not a lot of guys that wrote music. So I thought maybe this is kind of my, distinctive trait. But going back a little further than that, when I was in kindergarten, I had a piano teacher. I didn't want to take lessons, but mom and dad forced me to do it because that's what parents did back then, right? And I was an obedient kid. All right, so I'm studying piano, not really excelling, but this teacher said, here's what I'd want you to do. He goes, if you will practice your scales and your hand and exercises, I'll let you write a song next week. Now I'm in like 1st grade or kindergarten around there. I'm like, what does that even mean? Write a song? She goes, so she would have me write like the first week she wrote the left hand out. She goes, now you put in the right hand. It was like 8 bars maybe. So I did. I just did parallel thirds, which is kind of cheating, but at least, I did it. She goes, good. Now this week you're going to write a march. I go, what is that? She goes, and she explained what a march was. And then the week after that, I did a waltz. And then I did a polka. So this is talking about 1st grade where I wasn't a young budding Mozart, but I started to create music on my own early. Janet Hodges, put that in my head. You can kind of create music as opposed to just regurgitating other people's stuff.
That's exceptional.
It really was exceptional. I lost track of her over the years, but it probably the most significant event of my life if you go back that far. So
Janet Hodges.
Janet Hodges, yeah.
Janet Hodges in California.
In California, yeah.
Okay, all you folks out there, anybody know Janet?
Anybody know Janet?
She can claim some of this. That really is exceptional because nurturing creativity like that is it not all teachers do that. And it's not the most common path, but clearly those seeds planted early stuck.
They did. Well, I had no other skill set. I mean, I kind of could draw. I wanted to be an animator, but I wasn't good enough as a draftsman. So I was a clumsy band geek kid, I got a little bit of game later on, could play a little basketball and stuff. But back then, man, I had no confidence. I had nothing. And the music gave me a toehold, for my life. And so, I talk to kids a lot when I go out and do things. And I talk to them about their responsibility to find out who you are, because you have no idea who you are now. That's right. That's your main job. Maybe it's something music will help you do that. Music does a great many things, for a young developing mind. We all know this, but as far as inspiring kids, I don't know what's a better thing to do with our time. If the Big Fat Band inspires kids to just, push their boundaries a little bit and get engaged in something like music, which can sustain you your whole freaking life. Whatever's going on with your life, if you're sick, if there's a pandemic, if there's a war, or I don't know what it is, your girlfriend leaves you, whatever it is, music's gonna be there. I can't tell you how fortunate I feel like that I have music in my life. I wish that for everybody. Find your version of music. Music, was it for me? Maybe it's something else for you.
That's great. Hearing how those first seeds got planted is inspiring to me, for sure. Before we move on, I know that Tom's going to ask a question here in a sec, but I want to introduce everyone to Keith Farmer, one of our ASBDA members in Colorado. Keith is also a jazz band leader, and his high school jazz band is going to be performing at ASBDA's National Convention this summer. So we're all looking forward to hearing that. So thanks for being here, Keith. And Tom, would you like to ask a question?
Sure. Let's start with Gordon. You started to talk a little bit about inspiration for composition. So a very simple question would be, maybe not that simple, where do you start? Do you start with melody? Do you start with chords? Do you start with a lick? Do you start with, where do you start with before you continue to do a chart, let's just say?
Okay, sure. Well, a couple of things about that topic. So I am inspired by people and what they can do. Like if I'm listening to a beautiful John Williams score, I'm moved by the music, but I'm also moved by the fact that music used to be nothing. It used to be a blank piece of paper or a blank computer screen. And somebody sat down and found something and organized these sounds in a way that it's moving my heart. That blows me away that people do that, whether it's with music or whether it's architecture. We could argue about the source of that. I have a friend from Australia, James Morrison. He's a fantastic musician, plays every instrument at an exceptional level. And he said, he goes, I feel like I'm kind of a radio. Like some people are like iPods, and whatever you put in them, then it plays back. His analogy. He goes, I'm more like a radio. I feel like I just let it flow through me. Chick Corea would talk about that in a similar way. And you can watch Chick as he plays. He doesn't judge or have expectations about it. It just he lets it kind of happen. He doesn't try to force it into some place preordained. So for me, I listen. If I have an assignment to write something for somebody, they might say, we want something like this. And so I'll know what this is. I have enough craft. I can go, okay, that means these kind of rhythms, these kind of chords, yada, yada. But it's in terms of the nuts and bolts of it. I studied orchestration with a man named Albert Harris, and he was an orchestrator on staff at Universal back when they had staff composers and like that. He used to work for Henry Mancini and John Williams and incredible legendary guys. And I said to Albert, I said, my challenge is I feel like when I'm writing for some instruments like the violin, it doesn't sound violinistic, if that's a word. He goes, you know why, Goodwin? It's because you're writing for the piano. Because you need to have your compositional and orchestrational destination in your head the minute you think of something. So that means the melody and the harmony and the orchestrational content, they all come at once. And I go, that seems ridiculous. He goes, here's what I want you to do. So he goes, here's a piece of score paper. And he goes, now these top 2 staves are for brass. These 2 are for strings. Here's woodwinds. Here's percussion. Here's harp and piano. And he goes, write 8 bars of music, but don't you put one note down till you know who's going to play it and why. And I'm sitting in his office, and I was used to sitting at the piano and just, here's this chord, and feeling around, trying to find it. And then maybe a melody comes into under my fingers somehow. And he goes, you need more discipline as a composer. Put a note down, but not till you know who's playing it. And it was paralyzing for me to do. It wasn't how I was taught. I was taught to orchestrate, like to take a Mozart, piano sonata and orchestrate it for strings. Oh, I'll assign this part to these guys and assign this part to these guys. And that's one way of doing it, but it's not the most organic in terms of being creative. So over a period of time, I got used to doing that. So now when I write, it all kind of comes to me. Now, there's two things that I keep in mind also: big picture and little picture. So I might have a thing that comes to my head, like it's a big band shout chorus, and it would be like, or something, right? Now, I was singing gibberish right then, right? Mostly kind of approximate pitches, but it had a vibe to it, right? So little picture. Actually, no, that's big picture, actually. So what I need to do is capture that somehow, either play it on the piano, or now I play it into the computer, or get my phone and sing it into a voice memo, somehow capture it while it's there. And then later, figure out the little details. What notes are they? But if I get bogged down in the little details while I'm trying to blue sky it, then it's paralyzing and it stops your progress, right? So that was something I've developed over the years in terms of composition. And actually, it kind of applies to your life sometimes too. If you get like a viewpoint of where do I want to go with my life, and you kind of start to try to picture yourself down the road and what that would be. And what I try not to do is judge it, like, oh, I could never get there. Leave that behind. Picture where you want to be, the person you want to be. And that starts to solidify. And then the path starts to reveal itself to you, right? So anyway, that's just kind of been my experience in terms of a long-winded answer to your question of what comes first.
Very good. Jeff?
Wow, yeah, that wasn't long-winded at all. That was insightful and things I've never even considered. One of I know that you've done other things. You're known for your, amongst most of us for jazz band compositions, but I know you've done some other type works. In fact, I've got to confess that, being the geek that I am, one of the first times I ever saw your name was on that classic movie Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Goodness.
And so, but I know you've done film scores and things like that. But what are some other things that you've done? Have you done or thought about doing anything for concert band, wind band, things like that? Or
actually, right now I've got a commission. The Boston Brass has asked me to do a piece for them, plus wind orchestra, plus rhythm section. So I've got the first draft of it done. It's about 10 minutes. I thought they wanted like 6 to 7 minutes. It's 10. Sometimes these things take on a life of their own. Since it's a long form piece, I wrote the 10 minutes, and I'm kind of letting it aside for a couple weeks, so then I can come back and assess with some objectivity. I do really enjoy, I'm kind of pigeonholed as the big band guy here in town, definitely. But I love writing for orchestra. I've done about 3 string quartets, and I've written a soprano sax concerto, and I've written a trombone concerto, and I've written a trumpet concerto, and I've written a double concerto for clarinet and piano. And I'm working right on a piece of an album of solo piano. Actually, it's piano duets, and I'm playing both parts. And it has improvisation in it, but it also has, you know, a lot of notated stuff. One's like pretty Debussy-esque and whatever. So my interests are pretty eclectic. But I will say that I am attracted by large palettes. You know, I love the colors of an orchestra, all the opportunities available, you know, in wind orchestra, and you know, and in big band. That's always appealed to me. Now, along with that becomes economic and logistical nightmares, because I mean, it took me probably 4 months to write, you know, my trumpet concerto, and we played it once with the Melbourne Symphony. So, okay, it was unforgettable, but that's a lot of time, and I'm trying to decide, well, is it appropriate for me to devote time to that at this stage of my life? I think the answer is yes. Actually, because you know, I got to conduct them and stand up there, and I'll never forget it. Part of the problem is I don't have the time to start promoting it and try to seek out other opportunities to get it performed again. So, but to answer your question, absolutely, I'm very interested in a lot of other styles, and but I have to say, I think styles are all starting to kind of the barriers are breaking down. So I'm okay with using some jazz language in a kind of a classical piece, or some, you know, I love the fact that, you know, the musicians nowadays, they don't specialize as much as they used to. The string players can kind of swing now, you know. The French horn players know how to play in time. They know how to make that instrument so it speaks a little earlier and stays, you know, with the tempo. So. That's been a nice thing to see over the past couple of decades.
Going down to Keith Farmer and see what he's got for us.
Well, hi, Gordon. I just want to thank you for all of your music, both written and live performance. My groups had the opportunity to hear you live at the University of Northern Colorado Jazz Festival a few years ago before COVID. And I mean, it was the experience of a lifetime for those students. And my group this year, we have already performed Hunting Wabbits. It really, you know, I wasn't sure that they could do it. You know, I got it out, like, well, maybe, you know, this year after COVID, and but it really took them to another level. It really inspired them. So, you know, what I'm wondering from you is, what would you, as a composer like me, to be telling the students about music, about jazz, about, you know, inspiring, you know, what should we as teachers, you know, what's the message you'd like us to be getting to the students that are experiencing your music?
That actually sets me up to go into an area that we talked about a little bit on the panel before we started. And it's about difficulty level of the music that musicians are playing. I've been hearing the comment how hard my charts are for a long time. I don't try to make them hard. I just write what sounds good to me. But I have also, and this includes the guys in the Big Fat Band, when we did we didn't plan on doing gigs at all. We thought, let's just record a record and that'll be it. We'll document these charts and then we'll go back to our other stuff. And we got an opportunity to do one gig. And I remember Wayne Bergeron saying, you know, Gordon, I don't know if we can play 10 of these charts in a row. And I said, well, you big baby, maybe you can. And so we it was a kind of a muscle memory thing. And keep in mind, a lot of the guys in the band are used to playing in the recording studio. So that's it's a different muscle, because you go to a session, they put a chart on the stand, and the job is to read it down perfectly and then record it. And if it's too challenging, it takes too much time, it's costing money. And the producer of the movie or whatever you're doing is going to be like, well, come on. So composing for that idiom, you can't get too deep. And so consequently, the players are used to plowing through a lot of music quick. And And from their point of view, if they get it done quick, they get out early and they got paid for the full 3 hours and they're out, you know? So there's an economic incentive to do it. This is a whole different value system though. This is like, we want to get deeper than just a surface level, right notes, right rhythms, good intonation thing. We got to get into the music like Count Basie's band. Those guys play the same charts every night of the year and you could hear it, right? You could hear how lived in the music is. So that was my first challenge, to get these guys out of the studio and on the stage and willing to sound bad, willing to make a mistake in front of everybody if that mistake comes from effort and from desire and commitment. I don't care about those mistakes. What I care about are mistakes made from distraction or thinking about, you know, what I have to do tomorrow, or how tired I am because I had a long day, or I had a fight with the wife, or none of that stuff belongs on the bandstand. The bandstand is a sacred place, I think. So, and here's the other philosophy that I started to kind of evolve into. And it's about the use of the word hard when describing music or when describing any task. I believe to call something hard, it kind of predisposes the outcome. If you call it challenging, then you can meet a challenge. And I've seen this at the professional level where guys in my band have come up to me and said, I have to thank you for pushing me, because now I can play things that I never thought that I could do. And so I don't think it's any different for at almost any level of musical development. So if your kids play Honey Wabbits and they get 70% there, I really think they're going to grow from the effort. And now I also know there's a factor about not throwing too much at them so they become discouraged. I know they need success, and particularly now after COVID, when the programs have a lot of attrition and people leaving, it's hard to kind of wrangle it. So I get all that, but I really think that most students are going to respond. I've seen it a million times. If there's an educator whose will is strong and loves music and conveys that to his kids, they follow, and it starts to build a culture in that community. That's what I was lucky enough to have in my high school. I had Robin Snyder, and then all the band parents and administrators and everyone else kind of followed along. And we built something from scratch, and it sustains like almost to this day. It kind of comes and goes, as it does. So I guess I would say to your students that it's a step at a time. It's got to be a step at a time. You can't expect yourself to play it perfectly like Wayne Bergeron can, because he's got 40 years of doing it and 10,000 hours of practice, So, but as long as you've taken that step today and then tomorrow you take the next step, then and you're committed to it, that's all anyone can really ask. And it's incredible how long it took me to learn that, because I compared myself to musicians my whole life. Compare myself to Michael Brecker, compare myself to John Williams, Chick Corea, Oscar Peterson. I would hear these guys go, how did they do that? How did he finger that high note? And I'd just be in my head, and it became toxic for me. And I remember I was doing a gig with Arturo Sandoval, and we're trading fours on some blues. And after about 8 bars, he starts playing really high and fast. And he's like playing triple C's. And I look like, what am I supposed to do with that? So at the break, I said, hey man, don't do that to me when we're trading. How am I supposed to? He goes, well, just be you. I said, yeah, but he goes, I'll be me, you be you. So I thought about it, and I said, I guess he's right. In a way, I need to just be me. And now think about it. If you're having a conversation with somebody and that person is yelling at you, right? And he's screaming at you, and now you can try to match that emotion, or you just kind of try to be calm and then try to be you and how your response is. It's not like it's always easy when that happens, but I think his point is probably valid. You know, I did a clinic down in Australia, and I saw this young lady on the tenor sax, and she was trading with the trumpet player. And this trumpet player he was kind of sloppy, but he had a lot of energy and chops, and and she's playing like really quiet and demure. So I did a little clinic after their performance, like we do. And I said, so listen, ma'am, I don't want to tell you how to be, who you are as a person, because maybe you like being quiet. That's great. I said, but that conversation you had musically was out of balance. And I go, and you, my friend, you were yelling at her. Were you listening to what she was doing? I go, your responsibility is to have a dialogue. And I go, if you were pressing your advantage, because clearly she plays soft, she plays quietly. And I said, so a little bit that's on you. I said, but ma'am, you can be a quiet, shy, demure, feminine person if you want. That's your right. On the bandstand, that's limiting. I need dynamics out of you. I need you to have an expanded toolkit. So when you tell a story on your saxophone, you've got verbs and adjectives and nouns and the equivalent of that. So maybe, think about how you might attain that. And I'm thinking she's like freaking out. Then I've singled her out and talked to her, But I always hope that maybe somehow the message got to her at some point and it would help her, on and off the bandstand. Another long-winded answer to your question, though.
Well, thanks so much. That reaffirms a lot of things I already talked to my students about.
Great.
I think we're going on to David.
Yeah, so Gordon, I know so many people listen to your music, for enjoyment, for influence, for all kinds of things. I'm just curious, is there anyone out there right now you're listening to for enjoyment, just to kick back and relax?
Oh yeah, well, I started to do a FM radio show about 5 years ago, and it's called Fat Tracks with Gordon Goodwin, and they asked me to do the show, and I said, well, I'll do it if you'll let me play any style of music I want, not just Count Basie and Miles Davis. If I'm going to play Stevie Wonder or John Williams or whatever, as long as it has real content and integrity, musical integrity, honesty, I want to be able to play it. They said, go for it. So the process of doing that show, I started to have to do a little research and not just listen to the same old stuff that I would just normally listen to. And I don't have a lot of time to do that, but this show forced me to spend some time and start to find some new guys, I found this band from Sweden, Dirty Loops, just fantastic, and then early Jacob Collier, I found him when he was just coming up on YouTube. There's a fantastic piano player named Emmett Cohen, whose music I discovered. There's so many people. There's a saxophone player from Puerto Rico. What's his name is, anyway, the answer is definitely, it's really been an important and inspiring thing to do. Because I remember we were in college, man, we'd go to the record store every weekend, right? I'd come home with $50 worth of records. And every week there was a new thing to learn. And then and of course, record stores went the way of the dodo, but your life gets involved with family and paying the mortgage and doing your job. And then you find that you're not refilling your tank inspirationally anymore. And I think it's really important to do that. Having said that, I still love to listen to Count Basie and Thad Jones and those big bands. I still love to listen to Debussy and Tchaikovsky and Mozart and Stravinsky. John Williams is a hero of mine. And so I probably listen to as much orchestral music as I do anything at this point, but I think it's an important thing, to keep building your database in terms of what your interests are. So thank you for that question.
How do people connect with your radio show?
Well, I was on a station here in Los Angeles called K-Jazz, and then they put me on hiatus last October. And the show is popular, I thought, and I don't know what was behind the decision, and I didn't get a good answer from them. But then a day later, I got an offer from a station in San Diego called KSDS 88.3. And they said, we want your show. And I don't know how they heard that it was available, but they are actually, we're going to, right now I'm doing it local in San Diego, although you can hear it on the internet. Or there's an app, KSDS Jazz app you can get, but we're going to nationally syndicate it starting in April. So that'll be great once we get that. And then, but I have to, it used to be, it took me 2 days to do a show. It's a 2-hour show, but I do a lot of shtick and I do a lot of kind of production pieces. And I get deep in the weeds about, here's why this chord is cool. Check it out. Root third 7, and here's the flat 5, and the flat 5, kind of rubs against this note here. I go, that's why it has a little tension. And I try to educate the audience a little bit, kind of like Leonard Bernstein used to do. He was so good, at explaining music in a way that wasn't overly pedantic or, over people's heads. I try to do that in the show. So, but I can get a show done in about a half a day now. And so it's a lot of fun. Every time I do it, I just finished one about 4 hours ago, and I'm invigorated every time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gordon, I have a silly question. So much of us teachers know you from your charts. Can you tell us where the titles come from?
Oh man. Well, yeah, silly is the right description for a lot of those titles. But I learned once I put a band together, I learned that I can't just go up there and say a silly title, because people always ask, well, what does that mean? Like this chart I wrote called Count Bubba, which is a pretty popular chart. And I wrote it for a reunion concert at Cal State University Northridge, where I went to college. And they had a deadline to get the program printed, and I didn't have a title. It was just a little shuffle, bluesy shuffle. So I called a friend of mine who's a writer, and I said, hey, I need a title for this chart. It's kind of bluesy and it's a shuffle and just kind of fun. He goes, all right, call it Count Bubba's Digital Souffle. I go, what does that mean? He goes, I don't know. All right, so I called it Count Bubba's Digital Souffle. And then we recorded it on the first Fat Band record, and then we did a concert, and I just felt weird saying it. I felt like I needed to have it. So I just shortened it to Count Bubba. But to this day, people want to know who that was. And it's like nobody, So I learned with 2 charts. Hunting Wabbits was one, and the Jazz Police was another one, whose titles fit the music so well that it's made the charts better. And in music without lyrics, there's no obvious, title that you can grab onto. So I might take 3 days to write a chart and a week to find it a name that works, because I've realized how important that is in terms of the, kind of the presentation, of the chart. So there are a lot of titles back in the day that I will leave to my indiscretions of my youth and go from there. I will tell you that the Big Fat Band, I didn't start until I was 40. Now I fell in love with Count Basie when I was 14. And then I got out of college and I got a gig working at Disneyland, which was really great, actually. I was playing a little saxophone, in the sax quartet on Main Street. And I was playing piano in a little rock band and a show band. And then they started asking me to write music for them. And it became, I still work for them today. That's one of the project I'm doing here that I have the technical problem. That's a Disney project. So it's a lifelong relationship. But I kind of got into the music business, and then I didn't touch a big band chart for probably 10 years or more. And I remember I was on the podium, the conducting podium at Warner Brothers Studios. I was conducting an orchestra for a cartoon I did the music for. And I was just going, I go to Warner Brothers and I write music like what they want me to write. Then I go to Disney and I write music what they want me to write. And I was making good money and winning Emmy Awards and working with amazing musicians. And yet it wasn't me. And a lot of times my supervising composer at Warner Brothers, he'd say, it's a great cue you wrote, really good. But next time, maybe a little less Gordon Goodwin, a little more Carl Stalling, who was a Warner Brothers composer we were emulating. A little less Gordon on the next one. And I'm going, what is Gordon Goodwin-y about it? I didn't know. Is it a passing chord here or a counter melody or something was just trying to get out, you know? So I thought maybe at age 40, maybe I got more road behind me than ahead. I don't know. Maybe I should plant my flag. So I started to write charts in the evening from 10 o'clock at night till midnight or 1 o'clock. And I was having busy days. I was working, writing animation music from 9 in the morning till about 10 at night with a dinner break and a lunch, break. And then I would write for 2 or 3 hours at night. And after about 6 months, I had about 5 charts. And then we recorded those. And then another 6 months or 8 months, I had 5 more charts and recorded those. And I reconnected with my original love. And I dare say, I wouldn't be talking to you today if I didn't have put the Big Fat Band together, if I hadn't finally had the courage to say, this is me. This is what I like. This is what I believe. And if you like me, that's great. And if you don't like me, I got to do it anyway. And I will tell you what, you got to be crazy to do it. Fat Band's got like 9 records out now. Every one of them has lost money. Who does that? You know how much they cost? They don't cost $10,000. They don't cost $20,000. They don't cost 30. I can keep going. Our second record, XXL, costs over $100,000. Now we had guest artists on there. We had Michael Brecker at Take 6 and Brian McKnight and Johnny Mathis. It gets a little expensive, but still. None of them make their money back. So who would have a business where you lose money for 20 years and just keep doing it? So the answer to that, of course, is there are reasons to do things besides money. And the fact that I found who I was and kind of declared it to the world has given me, peace. It's given me, kind of a grounding, if you will. And I wouldn't be talking to you today if I hadn't done it, I think.
I just put in the chat.
Yeah, I just saw it, yeah.
Philanthropy. It is.
Yeah.
It is in a way, because you're not doing it for the money. And I've been thinking all along here, here you are talking to a group of the leading school band directors in the country. And I don't know that did you ever think about doing education or teaching in any way deliberately?
My dad wanted me to get a credential to fall back on, his words,
Yeah.
And even at the time, I thought that disrespected the profession a little bit. Mm-hmm. That was back in the those who can do and those who can't teach thing, which has completely changed when it comes to music education now, because now you've got people that are, on the ground with music education that have also had a career, playing and in the music business. It's all just like the genres are cross-pollinating, so is that. And I think that's a good thing. My teaching has been sporadic, and I'll take a private student on, once in a while. But mostly I think it's when I just got back from Salt Lake City and did a guest artist thing for them. And I have to say, it's the most rewarding thing I do, honestly. I got a call probably about 8 years ago it was an email from a mother, band mom, and she goes, I wanted to tell you about my son, Jesse. And Jesse, had problems his whole life, but when he started to play the saxophone in 6th grade, he kind of found something that worked for him. And then he discovered you guys. And he became obsessed with the Big Fat Band. And he's like listening to it on his, headphones and his iPod, and he has it on his alarm clock when he wakes up. And I was a little worried. He's like, got so into this stuff, but it's just given him such energy. She goes, now we lost Jesse because he had fought cancer for many years as a little kid. So he'd fight it, it would go into remission. A couple years later, it comes back, so he's about age 13 and 14, he's getting chemo. And he goes, she goes, so he would say, Mom, and every chemo session was cumulatively harder, you know. It's not like you get used to it. It gets harder every time. So he would go, hold on, Mom. And he would put his headphones on. And he goes, and he would listen to Big Fat Band. And he would go, okay, I'm ready. I am reading this email. And I'm getting emotional now thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's something that I did as a selfish thing. I do big band music because it feels good to me. And yet the efforts of me and the guys in the band have changed this kid's life and given him something when he was having the hugest battle of his life. What's better than that? Is a Grammy Award better than that? I don't think so. So this is, the educators you guys are used to this, and you probably don't even know how many times what you do has that effect on kids. Maybe they call you, 10 years down the line and tell you, but that the good that an arts education does is so tragically understated in our country. It's pathetic and tragic and maddening that people can't understand what music and the arts can do to a young developing mind, how it teaches people how to see in between the lines, because life isn't black, white, on, off. It isn't. There's shades of gray, and music, it's mezzo piano, it's mezzo forte, or it's a little bit louder mezzo forte, and they're like increments. And so a lot of times when I talk to kids, in the middle school level or high school, where they're emotionally still kind of connecting on the neurons, and they tend to think, well, I'm really, like my kids would go, he goes, well, a little bit mad, but sad, a little bit mad, but I say, okay, so there are emotions that can coexist. You can be mad, or you can be furious, or you can be annoyed, or you can be mad, a little bit sad, or, all these things. And music is how we get a handle on how that works in our lives. So I don't know what is better to do with your time than to advocate and evangelize for music and to fight for it, so that everybody has music in their lives in some manner. You don't have to play it, but if you use it as a tool, when you're feeling sad, well, put on some Tower of Power. How do you feel after you listen to them for 5 minutes? Yeah. Right? It works. Yeah. The people in music therapy know this. They know how that works. One more story before you.
Well, I'm not wrapping up yet. I was just going to tell you, you sort of answered the question that I was getting around to and didn't even articulate yet, and that was reciprocal to what you were saying about the beauty of how that your music has affected that young person and others. Did you, for those of us who are in education, I know all of us can probably name some student who fell in love with their horn or fell in love with music at a deeper level, or didn't quit band or whatever because of your Big Fat Band. That when it got on the radar, you've done a lot of wonderful things before that, but that's what really puts you on our radar in a big way. Did you ever imagine that you would have that kind of influence and be that significant? I'm sure everybody in this panel who's taught students in school can say, yeah, I got a kid who's still playing their whatever because they heard Hunting Wabbits.
No, I would never have imagined it. And a matter of fact, to hear that comment, it still is a little bit surreal. I feel a little detached from the reality of that, because I mostly spend my time in here, trying to get the notes in the right order. And once in a while, then I'll go out to a school and I'll hear sentiments like that. And I need to learn how to take the compliment. We all need to learn how to take compliments better than we do, and I'm working on that. But it's a wonderful thing, to whatever degree it's true. The fact that I became good friends with Sammy Nestico, the man that inspired me, is something that I still can't believe, And on my wall right over there, I've got the handwritten manuscript for the chart that inspired me at the beginning, the Queen Bee.
Queen Bee.
After he passed, they sent me his It's like he,
Oh,
in
my
1965 or something, his handwritten, lead sheet that he did. And I've got it framed for the first page of the chart of the score. And so this is meaningful in a way I can't express. It's also interesting to look at how it gets passed down. And so the kids you guys are teaching are going to step up into their place in this the continuum. And that's what's interesting about this music. Despite all the economic and logistical challenges since the 40s or earlier, it's still here. It's still here. Now it's here because of the work of, people like you, and the administrators that support it and fighting back budget cuts and all that. But nonetheless, it's still a part of us. And I'm worried about it. I'm still worried about, especially at a college level. We're teaching kids to play, John Coltrane licks, and then what are they going to do? How are they going to? Who's going to pay them for that? I'm not saying I don't like John Coltrane, but I was fortunate that I found a niche in Hollywood that they kind of like the kind of stuff I'm doing this Disney thing, and it's because I did The Incredibles, that movie. And I got The Incredibles because I put together the big fat band. And by the way, the first Incredibles movie was supposed to be scored by John Barry. And John Barry was the composer that did the James Bond stuff in the 60s. So when Brad Bird, is the director of the Incredibles, said, hey, let's get the original guy that did that kind of secret agent sound. So they got John Barry, but the John Barry they got was not 1968 John Barry. It was a different, it was Dances with Wolves John Barry, very lush and everything. And it was not at all what they needed. So they fired him, he gave him $1 million just to not write the score. Now they have no money and they still need a score. And so, Michael Giacchino knew somebody at Pixar, like at a lower level, and got his demo in. And The Price is Right. It was his first movie, and then I kind of came along. But they had two names to help Michael out. And one was me, and the other was Sammy. And they ended up calling me instead of Sammy. And I never told him that because I felt like, oh, this is a little, it's wrong. He's Sammy, he should do it. But of course, I gratefully accepted the job. And so I've been able to find like a path, that utilizes my skill set pretty well. But that's a challenge for kids now. And I'm not sure that it's appropriate for us to keep teaching kids how to teach other kids to do something that's not relevant anymore. Or can we make it relevant again? Fascinating question for us to consider. But I do know this. My kid went to Berkeley for a couple semesters. I wrote that check. I know how much that cost. I mean, my goodness. That's a problem. My education in Northridge is like $500 a semester or something in the 70s.
We grew up in the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame with our kids. I'll ask, before I wrap things up, I'll ask Jeff and Keith and Dave if any of y'all have a last quick question you want to get in.
I don't know how quick this might be or an answer, but when it comes to improvisation, and you kind of mentioned something right then that made me jot this down. A lot of times the approach is taken of let's learn these licks, let's learn these patterns, let's learn this thing. Well, how do we get ourselves and our students beyond that into what you were just talking about, the finding their own voice and really making music?
Yeah, that's such an important question, and I ran headlong into it when I was a junior in college, because I had just kind of been regurgitating Charlie Parker licks and Phil Woods licks and Cannonball licks. It didn't feel like improvisation to me. It felt like just me kind of just piecing together other guys' things. And so I studied with a saxophone player by the name of Warren Marsh. I don't know if you know that name, Warne. And he played with Lenny Tristano and moved up to the West Coast with Lee Konitz, who's a good friend of his. He played in a group Super Sax, which was a sax quintet group out here. Anyway, so Warren had a real cerebral approach to improvising. But what he taught me brain flexibility exercises. So he would have me just quickly. He goes, I want you to do a solo, and he'd pick a song, not the blues, because blues has its own vocabulary it kind of needs. He'd pick a standard, like Out of Nowhere or All the Things You Are. He goes, I want you to play a solo using nothing but quarter notes. I want you to make it interesting. I don't want no vibrato, no scoops or falls or bends or any articulation, just quarter notes, and make it interesting using quarter notes. So it sounds easy, but it's not. It's really hard. And I do this exercise with students to get them kind of, because basically you got to slow the process down. It's like composing in real time, you know? So we go really slow and goes do 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 whatever, right? Just quarter notes. And that unlocked it for me. He would have me play like the famous hand and exercise number 1, do 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 do, right? He goes, all right, play it now. Just place it an eighth note to the right. So 1, 2, 3. He goes, now make it minor. 1, 2, 3. I can't sing it right, but so he would add these different tasks to me to get my brain flexible. And the other thing he had me do was he had me compose my solos. I would sit down and write out a solo. He didn't want me to play it. He wanted me to practice as I do when I'm composing, get an arc to it, and to have this lick spawn the next lick, which spawns the next one. So they're typically related and grow, you know, from here to there. So those are some quick things that help me in terms of finding my voice. And of course, continue to listen to as many people as possible. And sometimes you listen to somebody like Chick Corea or Michael Brecker, and they're this huge magnetic force that you're drawn to and you want to imitate. And I think that's fine. If you keep practicing and keep, you know, learning, you will eventually detach from that. And I think as you sit with it, your own voice emerges, but it doesn't happen overnight. You know, it can take as long as it takes. That's a really great question, though. Thank you for that.
Keith or David, anything you'd like to throw in right quick?
I just want to say thank you for saying that about writing the solos. That's one of the things I do tell my students. I'm like, you have to understand these recordings you're listening to, these people have played for years and years and years, you know, and
Right.
maybe they came up with that on the spot, but it's not because that's the first time they played it. It just, that's when it came out their horn. And so
Yeah.
thinking about thank you. And just thank you for being with us tonight.
Of course. You know, Bob Minster told me once, I complimented him at a clinic. He played I Got Rhythm Changes, you know. I go, oh, he sounded great on the rhythm changes. He goes, I better. I've played it about 2,000 times. He goes, seriously, I probably played I Got Rhythm Changes 2,000 times easy, you know. So yeah, I better sound good.
Well, this, you know, my earlier question, which was really sort of an open, unfinished question. Had you ever thought about education as a career? Listening to you tonight, I think all of us could probably spawn another 10 or 20 questions right now. And I feel that you are an educator in your own way, in very much so. And I was thinking back to something you said earlier about the economics of taking of say making the album that cost you $100,000 and you don't make a fraction of it back, or writing a concerto that's going to get played once or twice. Is it really worth your time? And listening to everything that you're saying, and I'm seeing how you are so much greater than the sum of the parts, all the way back to piano lessons as a little kid. And, you know, all these things that, yes, all those things that you do that maybe aren't economically, maybe they don't fatten your wallet, but they become part of who you are as a musician and person, and that's something money can't do. And I've got a much greater appreciation for you, I think, now as a very multifaceted musician. Just to close this up with two questions, and I won't ask any more because my friends here who know me know that I'll talk all night given the chance. One, what would you, any advice that you would have, or words, support, encouragement, advice, whatever, to the music educators out here today? And number two, just a little morsel of fun, something about Gordon Goodwin that we would never know musically.
Musically or personally?
Well, either one, go for it. Well, within limits.
I gotta say, well, you asked. I'm wearing no pants right now.
Oh God, not that.
All right. Well, we've covered a lot about music education, and I guess that, like me, sitting in my room, I know you guys are in your little communities, and it's great to have organizations like this one that help us feel connected, so that we realize we're not, in the trenches. And I hesitate to use a battle analogy, fighting the battle. It's not that. There are people fighting real battles right now, but I know the perseverance it takes to go there every day, and especially at the middle school level, and you build it up and you build it up, and then they're all gone, and then you build it up and they're all gone. It's just, it takes a special dedication to do that. But even though your role is underestimated and underpaid, it is a wife calling. Even though it's underestimated, underpaid, I think that in the fullness of time, we're going to see the importance of it. And I think that it happens one community at a time. Each of our communities, I've seen it again and again. And that is, there's no greater thing you could do, is to just keep in there and go to work every day and inspire those kids. And hand their lives to them, because you're doing nothing less than that for a lot of these kids. You're handing them the key to their future. And it's breathtaking to think of. So, and as far as what you might not know, I have about 75 books on the JFK assassination. And I've read probably about 2/3 of them. I got to the point where I can read half the book and I kind of know where the guy's coming from, and if he's a Warren Report apologist, or if he's a conspiracy guy, or what it is. So I'm a big I wouldn't say I'm a big sports fan. I'm a big Laker fan and Dodger fan, but I'm changing on that too, because I've started to think about spending my time, and do I want to spend my time watching other people do stuff, or do I want to spend my time actually doing stuff? Because I used to turn down gigs to go to Dodger games and Laker games. I'd turn down gigs and I would just, no, I'm going to go watch these guys. It was like, I was so into it. And then I started to think, they would say, everybody, you're Los Angeles Dodgers. Well, why? How are they my Los Angeles Dodgers? In what way? Did they ask me what the batting lineup? Did they ask me what trades they're going to make? Not so much, So I still enjoy it, and it's good. It's good for me to kind of get my head out of music. But anyway, I don't think there's anything more exotic than that's going on here. I'm a pretty straight-laced guy. I mean, I never was attracted to cigarettes, or I didn't drink that much, or I had like maybe 2 puffs of a joint my whole life. Pretty clean living, and I like it. It kind of keeps my head clear, and I like how that feels.
I know I have learned so much from you, and I feel pretty comfortable saying the same. Everybody on the panel tonight would agree that we've learned so much from you. And I think there's wisdom that comes with life experience is you clearly value that and are feeling that. I don't know, some of us are in our 60s, some of us on here, and there's something about, you start to become aware of that. And I see that in your where you're in your position right now. But
Thank you.
I want you to know how much you have done for us as educators. You've been just in many different ways. And I really hope we get a chance to talk with you again sometime.
Let's do it.
We could go on. Let's do it. I would love to. I know we could continue this conversation all night.
And when we do, you're going to have to say, Gordon, you told that story 3 times already.
Okay.
Come up with something else. All right. You're going to have
Okay.
to keep me on
But I
track.
have a list of questions. I had a list of potential questions. Hey, we didn't get to half of them. So
Okay. All right. Good.
come
Well,
back, do it again.
yeah, we'll have to cut you off because my ego cannot take any more of this inflation.
And so your
but-
wife was calling and saying, Gordon, your time's up, right?
Well, yeah, a little bit. Vanjie teaches vocal workshops down at Disneyland, so she was calling to tell me she's all done coming home. So
Yeah, I want to hear about the Disney on the next time. We have to do it again.
it's a date. I'd be happy to. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for all your work. You guys are on the ground floor. You're on the front lines of it. So
And you
thank you.
inspire us. You inspire us. So, and thank you for giving us an hour and a half or so of your personal time tonight. It means so much to us and to all of us in our profession. It's when we have good days and we have a lot of days that are really hard, and people like you inspire us.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that it's true to whatever degree it is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And everybody who joined us from home, thank you for being with us
Everybody.
tonight, and panelists. Bye, everyone.
Bye. See you later.